This program is rated PG. It contains themes and scenes which may not be suitable for very young audiences. Parental guidance is advised.
Be advised that the views and opinions of the hosts and guests do not reflect those of the station.
Every week we make a stop at your home to bring you the news from our journey around Asia and around the world. The news and our analysis of the news that are vital for your understanding, our understanding of the world we live in today, this 21st century called the Asian century, and the growing and vital role the Philippines is playing, as well as, of course, the other Asian states, such as China in particular, the leading engine of economic growth of the world in the next decades. And we always start with culture, but in this episode, we're going to make an exception because there's so many developments that we need to discuss in this first segment, news and views, and in our main segment, the Philippine-China focus, where we will discuss some of the controversies that have arisen the past few days. But more important, we are going to emphasize the bright future of our economy with this budding and blossoming cooperation between our country and President Duterte and the People's Republic of China and President Xi Jinping. Now, on our news, first of all, this is the ASEAN-China Tourism Cooperation Year, and that's the first news that we want to discuss. Chinese Premier Li Keqiang and Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte on Thursday sent congratulatory messages to an opening ceremony of the China-ASEAN Tourism Cooperation Year, which was held here in Manila. By the way, later we'll report to you the surge in Chinese tourists to the Philippines, which as of January of this year, 2017, we have been hitting 600,000 already. It is expected by the end of 2017, for the whole year, we will have 1 million. However, if the visa applications of Chinese tourists to the Philippines is to be the basis, these visa applications have grown by 250% since the visit of President Duterte to China last October, in October 2016. 250% represents a more than doubling from 500,000 prior to the visit of Duterte to China and the rapprochement of our two nations. 250% would mean an increase to 1.5 million. Is my mathematics correct? More or less, no? Maybe even more than that. But the target right now is 1 million. But anyway, the ASEAN-China Tourism Cooperation is a very, very vital development because the world's largest tourism market is China. The world's largest source of tourists is now China, to Europe, to the United States, to Asia, to ASEAN, and all parts of the world. Our guest will join us in discussing some of these news and developments. Professor Celso Cainglet, who is a professor in the ethics of international relations. We have invited him not only because of the knowledge he has on international relations, but also maritime issues, which has figured prominently in our news the past few days in particular. So, tourism. Anything to add to this news item?
Well, we might be overwhelmed because we lack the infrastructure
That's
to
right.
receive all these tourists.
Yes, well, there are some local businessmen who are starting to invest in additional rooms. For example, I think it's the Double Dragon group is adding 2,000 rooms to their chain of small inns or hotels, and it I think represents 6.6 billion pesos in investment. So I think we need tens of thousands more rooms all over the country. That's
Another problem is that our tourism parks are very expensive. I think the most expensive in Southeast Asia compared to Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia. For a lower price, you'll get 3-star to 5-star accommodation in Malaysia, especially Thailand or Indonesia. It's still expensive here in the Philippines.
Well, at this point, I'd like to emphasize to our Filipino audience the importance of understanding the connection of our economy and tourism, for example, to our understanding of our nation's foreign policy and policy issues. Because the next examples I'm going to read shows the impact, the negative impact of a wrong foreign policy. It means not only these problems, but more important, it means hundreds of millions of dollars or billions of dollars of losses when there is an erroneous foreign policy. And I'm going to cite South Korea today because this is connected to the news item we will read later on, where the U.S. has been forcing the deployment of a missile defense system called THAAD, the Thermal High Altitude Aerial Defense, THAAD. And the impact in China, which is very fearful of such warlike action, is this item. 3,300 Chinese cruise passengers stage boycott at South Korean resort amid the missile shield row. So immediately there is an impact. The Chinese cruise ship already arrived in the South Korean resort, but they did not go down to step foot in the resort because it is South Korean, and that is their act of protest. So this is followed by other news items such as China and South Korea cut flights to each other's country. What is the impact on the tourism sector in South Korea, the impact in the aviation, commercial aviation industry? So this will add up in the next few months unless this is resolved. Are there other consequences? Well, last week in the previous episode, we reported the shutdown of South Korean stores in many parts of China. So this will snowball, and I hope South Korea can resolve its problems, including this highly questionable policy of accepting military initiatives from the U.S.
It was wise for President Duterte before not to accept the offer of the Japanese Prime Minister.
Yes, they were offering
Missiles.
Missiles, that's right. I remember commenting that this was a bait of Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, which President Duterte quickly rejected. So now we go to the report on the THAAD missiles. The latest development here is that the THAAD's X-band radar to arrive in South Korea soon. And so we can expect this crisis of the South Korean economic relations with China to deteriorate even further. In the meantime, of course, South Korea, everybody knows the crisis there, political crisis they're in. They do not have a real president now. They just have an acting president. And later on, we'll give you an update on what the situation there looks like and who will probably become president of South Korea in the coming months, because they're preparing for new elections to replace President Park Geun-hye. Okay. But on the domestic front, the good news is the one of the vice premiers of China, Vice Premier Wang Yang, is slated to arrive. As we report this to you, they are probably going to be meeting already in Davao City. Chinese Vice Premier Wang Yang is slated to arrive on the 17th. Some reports say 16th. To meet with President Duterte in Davao. I'm not sure he's even passing by Manila. And at the same time, there will be economic meetings or meetings with our economic managers in Davao City. We have reported this several times already, and Vice Premier Wang Yang is bringing a package of goodies for the Philippine economy. That's why this segment on this news and developments, we have themed Philippine-China cooperation, economic cooperation, equals economic renaissance for the Philippines. So, what are the goodies in store for the Davao visit of Vice Premier Wang Yang? Some of them are, for example, the financing, the grants for 2 bridges across the Pasig River for Manila. One from Australia, the Makati side to Pantaleon on the Mandaluyong side to help ease traffic. Another is the
BGC.
Intramuros to Binondo. We have a lot of discussions on the infrastructure projects later in our second segment on Philippine-China focus. Professor Celso was just mentioning the BGC to Pasig, Ortigas route. We'll be discussing that in the second segment. The other, I think, Vice Premier Wang Yang is also slated to sign $10 billion worth of projects, investments. Well, in the past 2 months alone, including what was brought this past February by Chinese Commerce Minister Chong San, 3 billion at that time, 10 billion now with Vice Premier Wang Yang. That's 13 billion of a total of 25 billion. And some other reports say this is going to expand to $50 billion. What do you think the impact of all these investments will be, assistance, and so on? Well, would you agree with me when I wrote economic renaissance for the Philippines?
Yes, it's economic springtime.
Springtime.
That will eventually blossom, and comes the fullness of summer, we will harvest all of this, and it will keep us safe and secure during winter times.
And you know, it is so timely that this is coming in the 600th year, the 600th anniversary of the visit of Sultan Paduka Pahala of the Sultanate in 1417. This year is now 2017, 600 years. And I recall a historian journalist, Patanye, who described that period of the Sultan of Sulu, because of the relationship with China, to be the period where the Philippines was the emporium of Asia, the center of commerce and trade. And I think we are seeing the revival of this period. So it is very vital for the Filipino public to understand, because there are also elements trying to sabotage this new dawn, you know. And we'll go back to that issue in a while. So that's the second item. And now, this spring in relations does not limit, it's not limited to us in Asia. Trump is going to host Chinese President Xi Jinping this April. He has invited Chinese President Xi Jinping to visit, and I think Trump will host President Xi in Florida. And that is why Rex Tillerson is now in Asia, and the last leg of his trip is a visit to President Xi Jinping in Beijing, and I'm sure that is to arrange. Now, as a professor of international relations and ethics in international relations, isn't it safe to conclude that some arrangements have been made already? That's why Trump can invite President Xi. Otherwise, if there is still hostility, as that was the impression when the Trump presidency started, this seems to have all been ironed out.
Definitely, that's very normal in diplomacy, the back-channeling talks, you know. Definitely, I agree. And it's a good sign. It's a good sign. Maybe Trump has realized that there's a shift of prosperity to the east. And of course, they do not want to miss out that trend.
And let's not forget, we just didn't include here, we don't have enough time, but the Saudi king just visited President Xi Jinping in China. Saudi Arabia, of course, we all know, is a staunch American ally, but now he has made the pilgrimage, in quotes, in quotation marks, to China. I think everybody sees the positive future that China is bringing to world history. I think this is helped along by the attitude of the Chinese leadership and the People's Republic of China of win-win. That's why they keep repeating this. It takes a lot of many people some time to understand that you can always have win-win, not always zero-sum and one loser and one winner.
Even Kung Chu in his Art of War said that it is very...
Sun Tzu,
sorry. So Sun Tzu's Art of War said that it is very, very important for the stomach to be always filled. No? You may have a military might, but if the stomach of your soldiers are empty, you will definitely lose the battle. So I think this is the strategy of China to see to it that people will have enough food to eat, decent shelter and clothing, and I think it's working well.
Okay. Now, we'll go back to South Korea in the next news item because as we know, President Park has been impeached and there is only an acting president, so they will be rushing a new election for the president's position. And maybe it should not be a surprise, but to most people who do not study South Korean politics, this may be interesting. The front runner, 39% in the survey among more than 5 candidates, the front runner is Park Jae-in. I have to still master the name. Not Park, Moon Jae-in, Jae-in. He is the opposition's top candidate, and he is an advocate of friendlier relations with North Korea, more productive engagement, dialogue, as well as his opposition to the deployment of the THAAD, the missile defense system. So it seems that even the American allies in Asia will be turning, as President Duterte has started, to a more practical relationship with our Asian neighbor and the Asian giant, China. You have any reaction to that?
Well, it's very, very heartening that our country, our president, was the one who started the trend.
That's right, yeah.
Of, as you said, developing a more practical relationship with our neighbors.
Well, I hope South Korea can go in this direction very soon because it is important for the general peace of our region, avoidance of war. It is the only thing that can stop the Asian century from prospering.
Many years ago, the whole ASEAN, except maybe for the Philippines, especially during the presidency of Aquino, many of ASEAN countries have developed harmonious relationship with China already because they know that they will profit a lot from the boom of China.
That's right. Well, so economic renaissance not only for the Philippines but for Asia. And we have one more item, but we have run out of time. We'll read this next week and analyze it. Russia's Gazprom will start its gas delivery to China by 2019. What is the significance there? Well, next week, tune in again to Journeys. Okay, we'll have to take this break and go to our second part, which is the Philippine-China focus.